well, Commissioner Randy will appear, I'm sure. We have a quorum, so I will call the discussion meeting for Tuesday, September 13th to order. And we will begin our discussion session with a review of agenda items and turn that over to Manager McGill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight's regular agenda, we have the consideration of a resolution fostering diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We will have a conversation about that tonight in discussion session led by Commissioner Randy with support from Laura Pace-Lilly and Robin Etek. We will have the consideration of the acceptance of the resignation of Commissioner Foster. We will have the consideration to ratify the manager's approval of an emergency repair to the Recreation Center ice rink refrigeration system. We'll also have the consideration of the award of the North Garage Elevator Car Number 1 modernization. We talked about that before in prior discussion sessions. And then we will also have the consideration of the award of the Thornwood Drive Spring Bank Restoration Project, which again, we have discussed in prior discussion session.
Fantastic. All right. Item number 2 on the agenda is the DEI resolution. Commissioner Randy, would you like to start us off?
Sure, I can start. Thank you, Mr. President. So before I get into what the resolution is, I thought it would be helpful if I give us a little bit of context of where we are in the process and how we got here today. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Not screaming, right? I know it always sounds weird. Okay, cool. All right, so our diversity, equity, and inclusion started way back 2 years ago in 2020. The commission decided to focus more intently on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And toward that effort, the commission created an ordinance that an ad hoc DEI subcommittee, which served as part of the advisory board of the Community Relations Board, for a 1-year period, research and study these issues for the commission. And that committee ended up, that ad hoc committee ended up being comprised of 4 subcommittees, and this was deemed and created by the commission. The first one was a community awareness and community building group called Working Group 1. Second one was a diversity in boards and hiring group called Working Group 2. Third one was a police engagement group, Working Group 3. And the fourth one was a combination of Mount Lebanon DEI recognition, event planning, and incident response. And we've referred to that sometimes as Working Group 4. So the group was onboarded in 2021, and they worked all of 2021 doing research on these initiatives and doing deep dives. They each had a staff liaison meeting, staff liaison that were assigned to support that group. They had meetings, public meetings, as well as subgroups within those ad hoc subcommittees to do kind of little deep dives. And they presented the findings in our October public discussion, 2 of our October public discussions right here in that room in 2021. And then to implement, any comments? Am I going on anything you want to interject, anybody? Okay. And then to implement those recommendations, the commission expanded the charter and the size of our community relations board from 7 to 11 members to allow it to take on the additional capacity of these DEI matters. And then staff started to dig into the recommendations immediately. In March 2022, we also had a different public discussion where Laura Pace-Lilly presented the list of these items that were already in progress to the commission and to the community. And the commission began work on a DEI draft resolution, which went through several revisions, including input from the Community Relations Board. The DEI draft resolution was a recommendation, or more specifically, the fact that the municipality have a set of values and state those values publicly. Was a recommendation from all 4 of the DEI working groups. So that's why one of the first, and we thought that was a really great place to start. So the manager drafted our initial DEI resolution, and Commissioner Leanne Foster took on this draft and revised it over the course of this year of 2022 with input from the commission, from various municipal staff, and from the CRB, from some of the CRB board members, and Noah Evans was the lead on that for the CRB. We believe now it's ready to be presented, discussed here in this public meeting, and if there aren't significant changes, voted on tonight. So that's where we are. I'm gonna take a break and let anybody else talk and add anything that they want in there.
Did you want to call up the other two members, was it Laura and Robin?
I can keep talking too, or yeah, Laura Pace Lilly, Robin Vitek was very involved as well. At some point I'll read some of the draft some of the resolution as well, but I just didn't want to be the only person talking here. I want to kind of take a little break.
Any additional color you would like to add?
She I mean, we have some implementation things to talk about once we get to that point. So
I'm not sure what else to add. We're going to vote on it later tonight. Obviously, a lot of work's been done on this. Cindy did a good job of summarizing where we've come from to get to this point. So much more there is to add.
So,
Commissioner Grella?
I thought it was a good summary. I agree with Steve. You know, Mindy and Leanne shepherded this project. I thought they did a great job. And although Leanne might not be around to see the benefits of the work that they all put in place, but I think it was a good summary and nice job.
So I want to thank all of our advisory board members who participated in this process over the year. This resolution is just one very small piece, but it's a living document and how we will continue to embed DEI initiatives moving forward throughout the municipality. I know that we have an internal DEI task force that will take this and create action items from it, as well as other groups within the municipality will do that. And then our PIO officer is going to publicize it. I'll let her talk about that after I maybe read some of the resolution. I was thinking, so right now the public can look at the resolution if they pull up the agenda for the 8 p.m. meeting. That's our regular meeting. So if you go online and you search meetings for today and you go to the 8 p.m. meeting, you pull up the agenda. It's linked to the agenda in full. It's 2.5 pages, but I'd like to read the first whereas, if that's all right with everybody. Okay. Whereas human diversity can be defined as actual or perceived differences in race, color, ethnicity, religious creed, or spiritual commitments and practices, or lack thereof, national origin, language, or place of birth, citizenship and immigration status, ancestry, gender or sex, including gender identity or expression, and pregnancy and related medical conditions, sexual orientation, physical, intellectual, learning, or mental disability, political beliefs, medical condition or history, or genetic characteristics and family medical history, neurodiversity, age, military or veteran status, socioeconomic or public assistance status, family or marital status, or domestic violence victim status. And all these vast diversities exist among and between people everywhere. And whereas the municipality of Mount Lebanon has at the heart of its vision and mission a commitment to help create a community of belonging where all are welcomed, included, and celebrated. I think that's a nice place to end. It goes on to be a little more specific in how, but I'll let people read that. We're going to read it at the 8 p.m. meeting when we officially vote on it. But now is kind of our opportunity to talk about it and answer any questions or anything like that.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. Yeah, as we've gone through this process, as you all know, I'm very sensitive to the difference between community and municipality, right? Those are very different things. And the role of the municipality, you know, is important in this community, but it is not the community. So as this was being drafted, I was very sensitive to the actions being very much about actions that can be taken within the municipality, right? We can manifest values within the organizational structure of the municipality itself and how we provide services, how we employ people. And that's totally in scope. I get concerned when we get into the community conversation space. For me, the community is the community and it will manifest itself and create the values. The municipality's job isn't to create that. It is to, you celebrate and support the community that is here. So how do we balance those two factors? Again, there's a lot of desire to have the municipality do a lot in the community, and I appreciate that. But the community needs to be itself. The municipality really, at its best, is going to promote the values that we see as an organization in how we deliver services, rather than trying to project certain values into the community that we expect the community to manifest. So for me, that was a really important thing to be thinking about as this was drafted, and I think the resolution as it stands takes those things into account. And so I think it's a fantastic document that the municipality can be proud of and use as a guiding framework.
I think it's more semantics, but rather than saying in the municipality, say by the municipality, the actions that we do by actions of municipal government, rather than just language. I appreciate the sentiment, just by our actions, rather. Because distinguishing between our role versus there's 35,000 people here, right? And we certainly hope everybody is working together, but that doesn't always happen.
Right. No, exactly. So I think this is fantastic. But again, I'm very curious about implementation and how we think about the manifestation of this.
I don't know that I was going to speak that far. Mine was basically on sharing the existence of it, just to let people know the page that we're on. Obviously, we would start with staff and the outreach from staff of the advisory boards and all of our boards and authorities. The commission has great reach in the activities that you are a liaison to. So sharing that with your our organizations like Connect, places like that. Our junior commissioners and our junior board members are our link to the youth of the town and to the student council. So we would share it with them, the PTA council. I'm the municipal liaison, and I can also share it with our my counterpart at the school district, our partner agencies, Outreach, Medical Rescue Team South, Historical Society, St. Clair Health, even though they're not a full nonprofit, they're our largest employer. Mount Lebanon Magazine, the magazine website, the municipal website, social media, our e-blast called 710, and our new Inside Legal podcast. Be good places for us to introduce people to the intent of this resolution, and as we go along, they can also be places where we can update what we're doing.
Yes. Other questions?
I want to give a lot of credit to Commissioner Foster. Not only did she help lead the DEI initiative since its inception in 2020, she really took on this resolution and made it her own, helped craft the words, and talked individually to so many people on staff, to other commissioners, and to board members, advisory board members, to make sure it's a very inclusive resolution that can stand the test of time, and that isn't also being too specific and referencing things that might change within the municipality, and then we have to keep updating it. So thank you, Commissioner Foster, for your work here.
Agreed.
Well, I think this is another fantastic piece. So thanks to everyone involved.
All right. So if there are no other questions, we will move forward. All right. Fantastic. Thank you, Commissioner Foster, or Commissioner Foster, obviously, Commissioner Ranney, and Laura and Robin. All right, next up on the agenda is the stormwater fee ordinance. So we will go to Mr. McCreary. All right. Oh, we get the two. All right.
I'm just here for number support. He's the numbers man.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's about to be my time with numbers here in November. But we're here this evening to answer any questions about the stormwater fee ordinance and what has been discussed over the last couple of months. Phil has drafted the ordinance and we've all reviewed it as staff for the intention of a fee increase in 2024. with a CPI or a inflationary figure at year 5 to then increase thereafter with subsequent increases for the first 5 years and then a CPI starting in the 6th year thereafter. We've been talking about the Stormwater Fund for years, and the general fund has been appropriating dollars to the stormwater projects, especially capital projects that come up during the year that are larger than the capacity of the fund. So this will provide some capacity for the fund, really getting up to the year of 2029, I believe it is, 2028, I'm sorry. Really in the year where a sustained $2 million fund, that's an increase of 600,000 over over that time, should really start not having to put as much pressure on the general fund to fund some of these projects that do come up over time. So we feel comfortable with that, the scaled increase for the residents, because that is over a $6 a month increase over a 5-year period. So it is phasing that in, that it's not an all at once lump sum fee increase. So we think that's a good way to handle that. But really in year 2028 is really where we start to see the fund at over $2 million that really can sustain itself and not have as much pressure on the general fund as I stated. So Dan's here this evening. I mean, we've been talking about all the projects. They've provided reports. They've been Gateway has provided reports prior to the commission meeting. These are also available on the website and have been on the website since the inception of the fund, I believe, of all the work that's been done in the stormwater capacity. And to that point, we are going to, as a public outreach, that may be something you want to discuss tonight, with Laura's office at the Public Information Office, we plan on getting the outreach out there. I would like to do some sort of one-pager this year if this ordinance does pass. I would like to do a one-pager in this year's mailing of stormwater bills so that people know that in 2024 it's coming. I thought the letter in me being a resident, a new homeowner in 2011 when the first stormwater fee went out, the manager's letter that went out from Manager Feller at the time was really informative as to why I'm going to be receiving this now $96 bill for the next 10 years and thereafter. I think a letter or a one-pager with projects that have been done and things that people could go see if they wanted to throughout the community will be helpful, and a message from Manager McGill as to why we're doing this and those types of things. We team up, we get that out there and get that in front of the community. And also directing them to our new website beginning of the year will be helpful. Another avenue that we can use for the new website coming. So we can, when I say one pager, it's going to be 2 pages because it'll be front and back. We'll use both sides, but that's a lot of information to pack in there, but we could possibly do something on the website for additional information, leading them to the reports that Gateway's produced for 10 plus years and so on and so forth. So that's the plan of action at this time. If there's any questions, we're here to field them this evening and have that discussion about the ordinance.
Just to maybe add a little bit of additional context, because I don't know that we have a vast audience that follows us on TV, or even for that matter, sometimes we change residents out. So municipality initiated the stormwater fee in September of 2011. I believe we were the second in the state to actually do that. What that did was give us capacity. It's a dedicated fund. Prior to the installation of the fee, we typically used to spend somewhere between $100,000 to $150,000 a year, really just for normal maintenance of the storm source. That storm sewer fund has given us a capacity somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.3 to $1.4 million a year, which we've been able to take a more proactive approach to our stormwater management here. Not only do we use it for maintenance of our existing storm source structure, we have added additional infrastructure into a lot of areas of the community where we currently don't have it or did not have it. largely due to the age of our community and the way that development grew here. The other thing of note is that fee was $8 per month for one ERU when we put the ordinance into effect in 2011, and has not changed since its institution. Obviously, over that time frame, we've identified additional projects, costs to complete. Those projects have increased, yet we've maintained that $8 per ERU. In terms of perspective from a single family residential property owner, that's the $96 a year that Andrew referenced. The ordinance that is available online has a fee schedule that would increase that rate in January of 2024 to $9. 2025, it would go to $10.13. 26, it goes to $11.39. 27 goes to $12.81, and then in 2028 goes to $14.42. I think the other thing that's important to note is, as Andrew had referenced, every year since we put the fee in place, we do post on the municipal website a summary of projects so you can see where your money was spent. We also try to do a good job of identifying projects for the commission for the coming year and beyond, so that we have an idea of what do we need from a capacity standpoint. That's really what initiated this discussion. Was we found for the last several years, we are having to go into the general fund to pull additional funds to complete those projects. Again, this commission has been very proactive in terms of addressing stormwater and flooding issues. I can tell you, having been here for a length of time, that we receive fewer calls than historically we had in the past when we have a significant stormwater event, as we call them, because we've been able to address some of our higher, I'll say, impacted areas over the last several years, and we continue to work towards that end. So again, just wanted to provide some additional context for residents or property owners who may not be as familiar with the historical background.
I also want to add a little bit of context to this. Oftentimes, stormwater and dealing with sanitary issues too are kind of out of sight, out of mind, because the pipes are quite literally out of sight. But I don't think their importance can be overstated. How we treat our stormwater, how we treat our sanitary, and things like the new consent order, obviously more to do with sanitary, but there are stormwater considerations in that have real world costs for us. And putting this stormwater fee in place over 10 years ago is one of the smartest things that commission did back then. And it's not too often we get to look back at policies that we put in place 10 years down the road and say, hey, that was a great idea. You know, obviously Gateway and all the staff, many of the staff that are still here now were involved in that decision. And it was a good one. And it has put the municipality in a much better place than many other municipalities in our area and around the state that are going to be dealing with, certainly in our area, with a consent order that does have stormwater ramifications and can be very expensive for us in projects that we have to do in the future. So maintaining this stormwater fee and the work that we do related to stormwater makes us, in my opinion, good stewards of our environment and our neighbors.
Great.
I thank Manager McGill for providing the context. That this isn't, someone looks at this increase and saying, wow, you know, $6.42 for this time period. You really have to go back to 2011 to truly get a sense of the perspective and, you know, rates of inflation and so forth. For one, and for two, the list, and when I say list, I mean, it's a pretty significant list for, you know, the various projects over the years that have been worked on here, page after page of various projects that have been worked on using the funds. And it's not sexy, it's not fancy, but it's a nice spot being eliminated here or that sort of thing. And it's kind of very meat and potatoes kind of thing that we do, but I think it's very necessary. And so I'm glad we're addressing these needs.
Commissioner Randy?
No, nothing substantial to add, but I couldn't agree more. Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I'd just like to add one thing that hasn't been mentioned is that Craig mentioned the consent order for sanitary sewers, but we are under a federal permit for our storm sewers, our MS4 permit. And as our permits get renewed, the amplification of requirements increases at the same time. When we first started the MS4 program, it was basically just mapping, reporting. Well, we've graduated to pollution reduction plans, where the commission right now has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars just on pollution reduction. I think at some point in time, I don't know when, we will get some form of treatment of stormwater on a bigger scale. So I think this sets the commission up to be prepared for that change in how our government tells us we have to take care of the stormwater. So just to add that.
Yeah, I agree, right? I mean, I think that's the reality. In so many communities, we see, to Commissioner Grilla's point, it's out of sight, out of mind, and it's easy to lose sight of maintaining this infrastructure. And then you have backups and lots of private property problems that result. And for me, this is one of those investments that, to Commissioner Sloverman's point, isn't exciting. It's not something you see every day, but it is foundational to maintaining a robust, healthy community that is attractive to new residents, existing residents, and we do need to continue it. My only ask is that when you get it on the new website, that we have some charts and graphs that show kind of that trend of activity, over time. Again, tables are nice, but but visually understanding kind of how this spend occurs, I think would be helpful, just to understand that, oh look, we're doing projects. Heck, even a map would be nice, so that people can understand again how are these things actually being implemented, and what does it mean.
And if I would add something like this, the list of the many projects that were accomplished over the last years, so it's not theoretical. Here's some real world examples.
Yeah, agreed. Because again, this is like, I always go back to you can fix your kitchen, but if you haven't fixed your plumbing, that renovation wasn't worth it. You're going to have problems. That's where we are here. I agree with Commissioner Grella that this was a huge step that the commission took in 2011. That was forward looking, and I think it is our responsibility to carry the ball forward on this. So I think we're in a good place, and I hope that we have all the support we need.
And just real quick, I want to add, this is something we started discussing in earnest again before the pandemic. And, I want to highlight the work of Gateway, because they have been great partners in all things stormwater, generally engineering, but certainly with this. And also Andrew McCreary, because he's been pretty quick with the numbers and making recommendations here. And we purposely put a pause on this. We started talking about this before the pandemic, and I think we were sensitive to the issues of the community during the pandemic. So we did push this a little bit, but, we're at a point where it needs to be taken care of. And Andrew's brought it up enough times that we need to listen to him at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I fully support this. I believe we're going to pay for it one way or the other. We can either pay for it up front and try to, invest in our infrastructure and improve our infrastructure before it causes serious damages to residents' homes, or we can wait and do it after the fact. But we can't get away from this infrastructure improvements. So I would even be in support of pushing up the dates and being a little more aggressive. But I'll go with staff's recommendation here and start in 2024.
Fantastic.
One other point that a lot of people probably don't realize, and Commissioner Grell has been a big proponent here, we are also using that stormwater fund to address ice spots throughout the community. We have, at current count, about 80 of those spots that require repair. One of the things that happened with some of the larger event storms that we had over the last several years is that people that never got water into their homes all of a sudden had water in their basements. Well, they don't want water in their basements, so they contracted to have somebody come out and put a system in place to take the water away. The question is then, where does that water go? We really did not have a ordinance until a couple of years ago that said that you couldn't just simply dump it to the street. You needed to address it using one of several methods that are identified in the ordinance. One of the things that we are trying to do, quite honestly, when we do street reconstructions, we take a look at, are we deficient in terms of stormwater infrastructure, and can we pick up any of the existing ice spots that we know of? We are also being proactive and identifying the ice spots that are, in the opinion of the Public Works Director, the ones that are most problematic from a safety and time standpoint. That being, Public Works has to go out and make sure that they are salting these spots and addressing those issues because it's a public safety issue, and it does take time away from them in order to be able to address, maybe more quickly getting to all of the areas of the community during a snow or ice event. So there's a residual benefit here in terms of addressing those ice spots from a public safety standpoint, from an efficiency standpoint for Public Works, and we are trying to partner with our residents to provide them with a place to safely take and convey their stormwater. So,
any other questions or comments on the stormwater? No? All right.
One,
Oh,
again,
please.
It hasn't been brought. When this was put in place, it was, as Keith said, Philadelphia had one, and that was it. One of the things the commission at that time did was put a sunset clause in, because they wanted what you're doing now to occur, which is after it had been in place for a while, to look at it and see if it was worthwhile. Which again, we're getting rid of the sunset clause because I think that, as you said, it is worthwhile. So even you're looking at it was contemplated.
Agreed. Any good policy has that triggered. All right, fantastic. Well, gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, next up is the board realignment discussion. So you all got in your packets. My first crack at our realignment document. Again, I know we've had a lot of conversations about this. So I felt like the best way to try to move this forward was to just create a clean document that really contemplates a couple things. First, it's about standardizing governance across all of our boards, right? All of our advisory boards, so that there's a standard structure, that applies to all of them. So that was my first kind of goal. Again, we have many variations within our boards, and it seems like, each board is governed slightly differently, and there's different patterns of expectation. So I wanted to kind of create some standardization, because I think it will, it provides staff capacity to focus more on each individual board, right? Again, if you have a standard pattern, it's easier for commissioners, it's easier for staff, it's easier for residents to understand the pattern of how a board is governed. So that was my first goal, was to create one set of bylaws that apply to all advisory boards. The next thing for me was really to focus in on providing a scope for 5 boards that allowed for strategic vision, not just tactical action. Recognizing that there are boards who are doing, what I would define as kind of tactical, like day-to-day oversight or activities. I would think of the board, the Parks Board, being so involved in the parks themselves, right? They're providing valuable, input on how our parks need to improve right now. I want to continue to see that, but I also want to make sure that each board has the scope necessary really to think bigger picture, understand kind of strategic ramifications of change that they might recommend, as opposed to just being focused on kind of the short term. So again, it was trying to look at these boards and create groupings that were going to build capacity to look beyond the immediate. So I was really trying to balance a few factors as I went through this. Knowing that we can still, I don't want to prejudge, but I created, in my mind, 5 boards, right? Again, trying to get down to that standard framework that we had discussed the last time. The 5 that I came up with were civic engagement, which is essentially the community relations board. That's largely the heart of it, but relabeling it civic engagement. The next one is mobility and transportation, which is a consolidation of traffic and parking. Again, thinking again, keeping a lot of those core functions there, not wanting to, again, get rid of the functionality that the traffic board provides, but trying to, again, bring that skill set together to focus on kind of the key issues around not just cars, but all types of mobility. Again, we get a lot of residents who are concerned about, my sidewalk, or we don't have a sidewalk. Again, where do they go now? It's a bit nebulous. This attempts to bring that type of issue into focus much more under one board. Then I added Parks and Recreation. So again, we have sports, we have parks, recognizing that, again, these boards have evolved in different ways for different purposes. Yet it seemed to make sense that Parks and Recreation as a general rule go together. It's an opportunity to bring, kind of like-minded functions into a shared board to think bigger picture about these issues while still addressing the immediate issues.
And if I could, Andrew, every consultant that comes in, or often people that move from other municipalities say, oh, I've never seen a separate sports and parks board. They're always Parks and Rec, or parks and sports together. We may be very unique in that way. And so I think it does make more sense to have a combination Parks and Rec.
And then the last one for me, which is a big consolidation, and it took me a little while to wrap my brain around it, was community sustainability and economic development, which is in essence a consolidation of the Economic Development Council, the Environmental Sustainability Board, and the Historical Preservation Board. And if we think about kind of that long-term strategic vision of the community, right, that is a part economic development, it is part resilience and sustainability, and it's part historic preservation, right? Those, at a macro level, those things all do fit together. So how do we, again, in my mind, the question was, how do we create a board that is going to kind of understand these competing needs that we have in the community, these competing desires, and try to craft, policy that's going to kind of move all of these types of issues forward, as a whole, rather than having an environmental sustainability board that is only focused on, right, solar or waste or some sustainable only issue, without recognizing the broader challenges of, well, we also need to recognize the facets of economic development and preserving the community that we have, right? These are factors that we want to balance. And I personally think that if we have separate boards that are looking at each of these things separately, what we're allowing them to kind of go off into pockets and not recognize these kind of broader needs of the community. So trying to bring those together made sense in my mind. But again, as you read through it, again, all these structures, I've attempted to standardize them in terms of their scope, in terms of kind of their how they function. And then it's really a question of bringing in kind of these key areas that we want to perpetuate in these boards, because ultimately, again, we want the boards to continue to bring value to the community. And there are things that they are doing that are really important already. We don't want to lose that. For me, it's about creating a structure that is more robust and able to be sustained by staff and commission, because we've all talked, 11 is a lot for everybody involved. And I think we lose something by not, putting more energy behind a few as opposed to carrying all of them. So that's my short summary of this work. A lot of help, by the manager and by Phil and by our planner Ian to help me think through some of the bylaws and the logistics. But this is a baseline. Again, I'm definitely open to continuing, refining and improving as you guys see fit. But I wanted to lay it out here as hopefully a useful step in this process.
Well, thank you for trying to put from 11 boards down to 5. Thank you for trying to put it on paper, which means I need more time to absorb this. There's a lot here. I'm like, thanks, I'll get back to you, because there's a lot of stuff here that is out. So thank you for taking the first step.
No, Commissioner Flynn, there's a couple boards that we are just legally required to keep, right? So such as planning, that would stay as is in this proposal?
Yes. This is only focusing on the boards that are advisory boards to the commission.
And,
So
and the library too. I just want to tell the public and tell everyone that this would propose no changes to how the library operates, no changes to planning. What else? What other boards aren't impacted at all?
Service, code, building code appeals, right? All those stay. They're required. They stand alone. Like I said, this really just sticks with just the advisory boards.
Great.
That are created at the discretion of the commission.
Yeah. Perfect. And then also, I'm sure if I was sitting on an advisory board right now and listening to this, I would be a little concerned that my position is disintegrating or radically changing. And it's my sentiment that we're not making any immediate changes to people's positions, but this would kind of be over time of more of a plan, right? With a rollout based plan.
Yeah, that's my opinion, right? I want to think about where do we want to be first. And the process to get there probably does take a couple of years to transition into it. Logistics that we want to take into account. But what I don't want to do is say, well, let's compromise where we want to be because of logistics. Let's pick a target and then work to get there.
That makes sense. Like pick a year that we're going to do this and then work towards that.
Correct.
And most members, I believe, serve a 3-year term. So we could, if the commission wants, we could decide to not appoint new members that roll off in 2023, for example, if we wanted to, as kind of a phased approach.
Correct.
Just an idea, something like that.
Yeah. Manager McGill pointed out as long as there's still a quorum.
Yeah. Okay.
And I failed to mention the one board that I didn't add. I said 4. The last one was financial management advisory. My thought there is that I know. My thought there is that the pension investment advisory board is fantastic, right? They're doing great work. But I'd hate to have one advisory board just focused on pension investment, and not that they have to focus on more, but allowing the scope to potentially be more, I think is useful, especially as we start talking about things like total cost of ownership, right? And some of these more kind of bigger concepts that I think it's helpful for commission and for residents to understand the finances at a kind of more granular level, or at least at a more deep conceptual level. So having,
we're calling this the McCurry board.
Pretty much. Yeah, it's Andrew has to deal with.
Give me for 12 hours in November. It's not enough.
I want other people to have an opportunity. But again, that was trying to recognize that there is the pension investment board, which is important, and I didn't want to say, well, we're going to have just the pension investment advisory board when there are potentially other items that could fall under that scope. Again, Andrew, you do so much with parking already. I wouldn't expect you to be on that board. But how do we think about the finances of parking, right? Those are some interesting things to approach. As we think about these types of challenges, or the stormwater fees, right? How do we understand and think about the long-term, sustainability of that fund? It might be something that type of board wants to look at, more frequently than once every decade when the ordinance, sunsets. So I think there's opportunity there to, explore how that board evolves. But again, giving it a broader scope so that we aren't just pinned into one narrow focus, I think will serve everybody longer term. Commissioner Grella, what do you think?
Agreement. I think this was a great draft. I think the consolidation down from the boards that we have to what you've proposed here makes a lot of sense. I know we've had a lot of time to comment on this and to provide some input. I also like the standardization of the overall bylaws. I think that will serve to simplify the meetings themselves and to make it a little bit more clear to people what the needs are for their participation, because I think that has been an issue in the past with some boards. I think a standardization of the size of the boards is also a great idea, because there are some boards, just by nature of the number of people on them and the type of board they are, I think, that have a little bit more influence sometimes. And I think the standardization will help to even that out across the board.
And that is one point that kind of got lost somewhere in the process, of us drafting was, under the membership section, I had originally bracketed in the number of members, and it was kind of a question between 7 or 9 members. That was the original kind of scope. Somewhere we got lost, that got lost in the drafts. But I think for me, going to 9 members for 5 boards makes a lot of sense. Again, then you have so many per, we have, say, 1 member per each ward, and then so many at-large members. Again, I think trying to create that consistency of structure makes a lot of sense. Again, what exactly that number is, I think, is open for discussion. I didn't want to pin that down and try to decide, a number exactly, but I thought that again, creating that framework that's consistent. Again, we've all gone through this board appointment process, and it's like, well, how many belong on this board? How many go on that board? How many, right? If we start creating more structure, I think it will make that process more efficient. And to your point, Commissioner Grella, make it clearer for people who are interested in engaging, more clear what the expectations are. The other side of this that I was thinking about, again, about creating capacity within the organization is, we don't do a lot of training, right, for new board members. Mm-hmm. And that is a disservice to, everybody involved, that, a lot of people come in cold and really don't have that baseline training of what is this about and what is my role and how do I contribute?
Yeah, I see that it takes a year for them to be able to really contribute unless they have someone that's kind of taking them under their wing and helping them with onboarding. But go ahead.
Right. No, that's exactly it. It's like, so let's get this standardization in place so that we can provide that standardized training. We can provide that context so that people can hit the ground, maybe not running, but at least not crawling, for a year. We want to have that engagement as effective as possible. So again, for me, it's creating kind of this baseline that I think will allow for that process to occur without being prescriptive.
Well, I mean, certain things where it sounds like we're making up, like, well, you have a 3-year term, but you have a 4-year term, but we have 7 members here. I mean, we're not trying to be random. It just, I think, a bit more consistent, saying, oh, okay, it's 3 years, 2 terms, you just, doesn't matter if you're on parks or whatever. I think it just makes it easier for anybody, us included, to wrap our heads around.
Right. Agreed. It was interesting as we were thinking about the new website, right? For me, and I spent a lot of time on municipal website looking at board meetings, board meeting minutes. A lot of municipalities will have a very clear structure, right? If I go to this board, here's the structure, here's the link, here's the enabling ordinance for the board, here's their minutes, right? It's very clear and standard so that you know exactly what you're looking for and how to find it. And I think, again, as the current website is structured, right, it's really difficult to find, well, where was that enabling ordinance that created that board? I couldn't find it. So if we start, again, creating this pattern, it should enable that type of, richer communication, with everybody involved. So hopefully it helps. Again, I think there's still refinement to do in terms of, specific scope of each board. I think we all want to make sure that we're comfortable with the scopes of each board, and even which, how we want to slice up, the functionality of the boards. But hopefully we can at least, build a standardized pattern.
Like I said,
there's nothing. Oh yeah, there's nothing that I object to that I see here, but like you said, there is some more kind of maybe getting into the details and making sure it really covers what we wanted to cover and thinking about it that way. Are there any decisions that you wanted to get out of this discussion? Any specific questions?
This was largely just a, get this in front of each of you for discussion, make sure that you're aware if you have questions. But again, hopefully this serves up as a kicking off point to really start to sharpen the pencil, so to speak, and start coming to some conclusions before the end of the year so that we can get something in the books by the end of the year, if that makes sense.
Yeah. As far as numbers, you threw that out. I like 9 at least to start. I know it is hefty, but we only need 5 to show up for a quorum. And since there is so much work that some of the boards do and we're combining that, I wouldn't want to kind of go to like 7 or 5, for example. I think that'd be too much of a lift for volunteers. And then you mentioned from have a representative from each ward. I like that idea, but I want to think on that because sometimes in the past we've had a lot of amazing applicants, but they're not from the ward that we need. And we, can't easily fill the position. And so maybe it wouldn't be codified, but maybe we have an intent to have at least one representative from each ward but maybe it's not codified or something like that. That's something we can talk about in the future.
So for next steps, do you want to maybe, should we create a shared doc that everybody could go in, add their comments and feedback to? And then when we think we're ready, bring it back?
That makes sense to me. Do you guys okay with approaching it that way?
I think, yes. And I think also we'll have to take it to our boards because they'll be hearing this and have a lot of questions and need to explain that it's all very draft conceptual. We're still working through it. But I can, we can do that separately.
Yeah, because for instance, like traffic and parking, it feels like two very opposite.
Oil and water.
Yes. Go and stop. That's where I think to the point of talking to the boards, getting feedback, that sort of thing. So, well, a doc is good. I just don't know how long it'll take to kind of distill something down. Does it require a number of board meetings to get everybody's feedback? So I don't know what, I was thinking more your timetable saying, can we get feedback from the various people by when? You have kind of a sense of you want to get feedback by what?
If I had to ballpark it in the middle of October.
Could we send a link to all of our advisory boards of this meeting?
Emails, right? We can email our boards.
Fill a commissioner position between now and then. So there's
true. That is true.
Yeah. Could someone send an email link to this section of the discussion session to all of our advisory boards that are impacted?
How about I work with the manager to draft something?
Perfect.
That can go out to the boards.
Yeah. Just be sure it's like conceptual. Everyone knows this is something we're thinking about doing, but it's not effective tomorrow.
Agreed.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. So we're good on that.
Thanks for your hard work. A lot of work went into that. I can see a lot of thought.
It was fun. I enjoyed it. It was a nice Saturday and Sunday morning. All right, next up on the agenda is boards and authorities. I know, Commissioner Grella, you have an update.
Yes, thank you. Just from the school board, just a couple updates. Dr. Steinhauer will be retiring at the end of the year, so the school is putting a call out for a consultant company to assist with a national search for a new superintendent. Also, they are planning to launch a new English language learning program, details of which will be posted at a later date. And they are going to be implementing a multi-year DEI program, much like what we've put in place and talked a lot about tonight. The school will be putting in place. They had done an initiative earlier, but this will be a more detailed and again, multi-year initiative that's probably a little bit more like what we put in place with addressing different issues and different topics as it relates to the school board. So there'll be a little bit more information coming out about that as they continue on in 2022. And I believe that will continue through 23 and 24. So again, multi-year initiative from the school board on DEI.
Cool. I have a couple updates if you're done, Commissioner Grella. All right, the Parks Board and the Sports Board met this month already. The Parks Board, during their public meeting, gave a brief presentation on deer culling and our deer culling program, specifically the non-vehicular impacts of deer in the municipality from an environmental standpoint. One of the main things they discussed is how difficult it is to plant new trees because the deer protection costs more than the tree itself often does. And the impact that deer have on the community on young saplings, because they tend to eat our oak saplings and our maple saplings that naturally would otherwise occur in our parks, such as Bird Park or Twin Hills Park. And so it's kind of a constant battle. There's a symbiotic relationship between deer and a lot of the invasives, especially honeysuckle. Deer don't eat honeysuckle. It's very invasive. It takes over our natural areas, and deer hide in it and multiply safely in that area, while they eat all the other invasives and trees and young trees that kind of would normally be growing. So it takes a lot of maintenance to maintain a healthy, diverse ecosystem. And by minimizing, no one is eliminating the deer in Mount Lebanon. That's not the point of the program. But by minimizing and by reducing the number of deer, it reduces the number of young trees that are destroyed in the process. So they have a great presentation, and they're going to be taking that to the commission and working on that over the next several months as well, getting kind of some more specifics on that. And then the Sports Advisory Board also met, and they have finalized their priority projects for the year. But this was the first year that they were able to work within our budgeting process. That was a request of theirs last year. They worked closely with staff to line up their requirements and requests to what was already kind of on our CIP plan, as our 5-year capital improvement plan, and to give the input for this year's capital improvement plan well in advance, so that staff could include those considerations in our capital improvement plan. So when the commission does get to vote on the budget and the capital improvement items, it is already encompasses many of the sports board's recommendations. Their first 5 recommendations, I'll just say very quickly, were number 1 and number 2 is to re-turf the turf on Cedar Boulevard and add additional lighting. That isn't needed now. They're not asking for it now. They just want to make sure that the commission and municipality is aware that that's probably our most utilized asset from a recreation standpoint, and it's approaching the end of its useful life, and it will be scheduled to be replaced in the next probably 2 years. It depends on its we checked it every year. It was initially scheduled to be replaced in 2023, but we did an assessment. The municipality did an assessment. It looks great. It's going to get another 2 years, but they want to kind of keep it up there just so that it's at the front of our mind. When it is time to replace it, we do allocate the funds for that. And then number 3 on their list were Brafferton field improvements, and that is on our CIP already. It's about $80,000, and that's converting the infield into a regular multi-purpose grass field and repairing the fencing and improving the drainage in that. That's all I'll talk about, the first couple ones. So, but a lot of synergy there, and I think good cooperation and input between the boards and staff.
But thank you to staff for facilitating that process. I'm sure you were heavily involved. Getting them the information and giving them that opportunity to participate, that is important.
Planning board met and gave preliminary approval to a project on Pennsylvania Boulevard. You can give a bit of background if you want more detail on the project. We don't have a meeting scheduled for this month, so we'll see how long until final approval comes back. But that's, I know there have been a couple of projects proposed down on that site. This one again got preliminary approval by the planning board. Traffic board met, continues to do the good work they do. There's a concern about an issue on Cedar Boulevard, and the traffic engineer is going to be reviewing that and coming back with some recommendations that are meeting in October.
Fantastic. Yeah. All right, for me, Connect has a Future of Fire Summit this on the 15th. Is that Thursday?
I think there's a future for fires. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're having a summit that is bringing together a variety of chiefs and electeds to discuss kind of the future of volunteer fire and fire departments in the region. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges in this region. Statistic that stuck with me that I've had a hard time wrapping my brain around is that in 1970, there were 300,000 volunteer firefighters in Pennsylvania, and now we are down to 38,000. So volunteer fire, has, and we aren't experiencing it here, right? I mean, our fire department is doing fantastic, work on so many levels, but our neighboring communities aren't experiencing the same thing we are. So this is a topic that, that Connect is bringing a variety of people together. The State Fire Commissioner is coming to speak, a variety of others. So it's an interesting topic. Obviously, it does have ramifications for us long term. So if you are inclined, I would definitely invite you to come. If you're available, I will be there. It should be a great conversation. The Environmental Sustainability Board met. They have set aside their work on the climate action plan for the time being. They had done yeoman's work to gather a lot of kind of information about long-term planning around climate action planning, again, with the goal of updating the existing climate action plan for the municipality. But again, knowing that we're going into the comp plan, they wanted to wrap that to really focus on communicating that to the consultants around the comp plan. And they're going to start to shift their focus really on more of a policy focus and education focus. So they're thinking about where do they go in terms of proposing policies to the commission that they think would benefit either the municipality itself or the broader community. So that's kind of where they're shifting their focus, is to the more pragmatic as opposed to the strategic. So I'm excited to see where they go, but more to come on that front. Those are mine.
Commissioner Flynn, if I may, I have two more quick updates. I have an unofficial Parks Board update, as I'm not the liaison to the Parks Board, but I want to relay feedback that all of the residents I've talked to in the 4th Ward love the meadow that has been put in at Pinecomb Park. So the Friends of Pinecomb Park and the Parks and Recreation Board, I think, have done a great job there. So I just wanted to provide that feedback. We've had substantial feedback also. Thanks to Ian for setting up a meeting with the residents of the Bradfordton Park area, also in 4th Ward. We had met, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago now, to discuss potential changes over at Bradfordton Park. We had great turnout in the middle of the rain by quite a few residents to discuss potential and get some input from the residents on Bradfordton Park. So thanks for that meeting. Residents expressed appreciation for that.
That's fantastic news. All right, well, I will leave us with one final comment for anybody watching or in the room. If you have not participated in the survey that is at ascendlebo.com, please do so. This is part of the comprehensive planning process, and there is a fantastic map that you can drop your ideas onto. A whole variety of things. It's really interesting to see the comments that people are providing, suggestions. So I definitely encourage everybody to go take a look at the map, and please take the survey. This is really important for the future of the municipality. So with that, giving everybody back 25 minutes of your time, and we will see you in the commission at 8 o'clock. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.